Hey everyone. Today, I unearthed an absolutely fantastic novel with a particularly fascinating plotline. The female protagonist Kai faces a difficult choice between her father and her lover Matteo sacrificing her father for an alliance, but when she eagerly goes to close the deal, she is cruelly deceived by Ajax. To make matters more unexpected, Matteo still been conspiring behind her back the whole time. Isn't this contrast intriguing? Let's delve into this novel together and discover the truth. Chapter 30 For Dead People Smell. Alpha's eyes were fixated on the smoldering fire just feet in front of her. She flinched every so often when it would make a loud crack, as if it were her own skin being melted away by the flames. The smell of burning flesh permeated the air, overwhelming her senses. To most people, the smell would have been enough to induce nausea. For Alpha, however, it was the haunting thought that this could be her fate if Adrian Rage got his hands on her that sent her stomach akin to total knots. She was certain that the mere thought of her burning in hell wouldn't be enough to satisfy Adrian's thirst for vengeance. Come on, Alpha. It's not good to breathe all this in for too long. Jared, one of Matteo's pack members, said, patting her on the shoulder. Matteo had assigned Jared the grim task of burning the bodies of two wolves that had attacked them. Jack's mate, whose name they still didn't know, was being held in a holding cell. If it were up to Matteo and Alpha, she too would be in that burning pile of bodies. However, Jack had made it very clear that they would have to throw him into that pile as well if that were to happen. As a result, she had become their new, unwelcome captive. Matteo was originally supposed to assist Jared with the cremation, but Alpha, in her determination to prove her capability, had insisted on taking his place. She reasoned that he had more pressing matters to attend to than overseeing the disposal of dead bodies. Besides, Alpha found Jared to be good company. His talkative nature and frequent stories about his children provided a welcome distraction from the grim task at hand. It was oddly comforting to know that some fathers genuinely care for their children. What if the flames spread? Alpha asked, her anxiety creeping into her voice. She was all too familiar with the difficulties of containing a spreading fire, given her past experiences. They won't. Come on. Jared patted her shoulder lightly before turning around, making his way toward the pack house. Alpha sighed, allowing her gaze to linger on the two corpses for a moment longer before following him. What now? She asked, jogging to catch up to Jared. He shrugged his shoulders carelessly. Lunch. The casual response felt a stark contrast to the gruesome scene they were leaving behind. As they walked, she couldn't help but wonder how long she could maintain this facade of normalcy in the face of the constant threat posed by Adrian Rage and his vindictive organization. The fingers on my right hand drummed on the table while my left hand swirled the bright red liquid inside of my glass. My attention was focused on a sporadic arrangement of letters all slammed together and a square on a newspaper that I had found. Mine now. Elbow. Elbow. I chanted to myself repeatedly as I searched through the letters for what felt like the 100th time in the past half hour. I wasn't great at word searches, but that didn't stop me from trying. Where the hell is elbow? I growled lowly in irritation. Your elbow is that pointy thing in the middle of your arm. Genius. A voice chided, causing my fingers to cease their movements. I raised my head from my puzzle and glared at the tall blonde at the entrance of the kitchen. I'm doing a puzzle, I noted, taking a quick drink of my fruit punch. Without a word, Daniela walked over to me, leaned over the table, and within seconds pointed to a row of letters. Elbow. I about flipped the entire table. FK. In anger, I picked up my pen and scribbled aggressively over the entire puzzle to the point that the letters were no longer visible. Once I felt accomplished, I pushed the paper away to the other end of the table and threw the pen down with it. I'd f***ing hate puzzles. I can see. Danielle hummed with her brows raised. She took in a deep breath, looking as if she was going to turn around and leave, but froze. Her eyes narrowed on me, leaning closer. You smell weird. My brows drew themselves together in confusion. Well, I drug out slowly. thinking of a reason why. I did just assist in the burning of 2 corpses. So yay. I probably got the dead people smell. Daniela shook her head, still seeming confused. No, that's not it. Leaning forward and taking in another sniff of the air around me, her eyes searched my face frantically for any signs that I would be lying to her. After a moment, her eyes grew wide. You guys had sex? She accused. Oh yeah, I guess that would change my scent a bit. I pondered, bringing my forearm up to my nose and taking a whiff. I didn't notice a difference. Maybe Donnie is finally a bit. Jesus. Kai. His scent is all over you, she pointed out. I looked down at my shirt and tugged on it. Well, which? Well, this is his shirt. I noted as if trying to come up with a better explanation. Daniela just rolled her eyes at me. Whatever. I'm just glad you guys finally did it. I thought you were going to leave him a virgin forever. She laughed and sauntered carelessly over to the fridge, shuffling around the contents inside of it. I, on the other hand, sat completely still in total shock and confusion. Wait, virgin, I repeated. Her head popped out from behind the refrigerator door and made eye contact with me. Yeah, she replied, popping a piece of cubed cheese into her mouth. You didn't know that. I remained silent as I thought about how last night went. Sure, Matteo was hesitant a few times, but I just chalked it up to him being nervous that he was hurting me or thinking I was going to regret what we had started. It never actually occurred to me that Matteo was hesitant because he hadn't done it before. Daniela's wild laughter is what broke me from my thoughts. Oh my God. You thought he had sex before you. Well, yeah, I mumbled, looking down at my hands sitting on the table. I just assumed that my mate would have slept around. It only seems fair that the fates would give me a mate that slept around maybe even just half as much as I did. To think that Matteo hadn't slept with anyone before me made me feel sick to my stomach. Guilt was eating me from the inside out. Are you kidding? He would never let anyone that close to him. Donnie laughed as she popped another cube of cheese into her mouth. A firm handshake is the closest Matteo has ever been to being intimate. I gulped harshly. I felt terrible. My heart ached at the thought of him waiting to do anything until he met me while I was literally moments away from yet another one-night stand when we first met. I had never regretted acting so carelessly more in my life. You don't think H.E.S. upset with me, do you? I asked nervously. Well, did he say anything about it this morning? No, he was totally fine this morning. Actually, he was very happy this morning. If it was for both of us having things to do, I'm not sure either of us would have been able to keep our hands off of one another. Unfortunately, Matteo takes his position so seriously that he can't spend an extra hour or two with me until H.E.S. done what he needs to for the day. But that doesn't mean it isn't bothering him. I think you worry too much. It's just sex. Kai. She shrugged, popping another cube into her mouth. It's not like you meant anything by it. I suppose she had a point. I never did mean anything by it. It was just fun. With Matteo, it was different. It was just fun, it was careful and loving. Yeah, I guess. Where's Jack? I asked, trying to change the uncomfortable subject. The more I thought about it, the more my guilt was eating me alive. Same place he has been, she answered, boredom evident in her tone. I sighed, leaning back into my chair with crossed arms. Doesn't he realize that Shess never making it out of that cell alive? I asked the question out loud so Daniela was able to hear, but it was more of a question to myself. There wasn't another way that Matteo would ever allow our territory. Right. She crossed into our territory to kill me or kidnap me or whatever the hell Adrian has in mind. Matteo is never going to just let her go. He would let Jack go rogue before he ever lived freely in our territory. Daniela stayed quiet and pondered what I had said for a moment. I didn't really understand what there was to think about. It was the truth, well, I hoped it was. Yes, Daniela finally spoke, making me release a breath I didn't realize I was holding. But I don't think Matteo has the right to make that decision. I wanted to scoff at her. In all the time that had conversed with Daniela, or even been in close enough proximity to hear her, she had never said anything that made me think she was such an idiot. Of course it was Matteo's decision. Ajax the alpha. What do you mean? I poked, squinting my eyes quizzically at her. Didn't you attack someone from Vienda's territory and get yourself locked up? She asked, making my teeth collide with one another. Well, yeah. But then you met Matteo. And now you're different. Everything is different. Donnie noted, making me bite down even harder. It was to the point that I was waiting for my teeth to combust. That's a different story. I chided, making Daniela's eyes roll. Not really. If anything, your situation was worse than hers. She accused, just doing her alpha's dirty work. You were doing your own. So what? You want me to tell Matteo that he has to let her go? I was used to Daniela always trying to cut me down from all angles. But I couldn't tell what her goal was this time, using what I had done in the past to try to make my attacker seem innocent. I couldn't even begin to understand what her issue was today now. I'm just saying that I think if anyone is going to make a decision about what is done with her, that it should be you. By this point, I was just lost. Was she trying to get me in trouble? Get me killed? Could she possibly be trying to be nice? What if I want to keep her locked up? I asked, genuinely seeking her opinion. I watched her movements intently, looking for any signs that she was trying to make a joke. She just peered back at me with the same amount of sincerity. Her answer was simple. Vin, that's your prerogative, but I couldn't have been more unaccepting of it. There was no way that Donnie was being serious. And if you're looking for me to tell you what's right and what's wrong, I can't. Because, quite frankly, this entire situation is wrong. I could see the frustration evidently displayed in Daniela's facial features. She was a flood building up behind weak gates, just barely managing to be held back. Something was on her mind, and it was begging to get out. You kill V and Dite as Beta and their Luna. They have every right to be hunting you down. We're your pack. Though, of course, we're going to stand behind you, no matter the situation. But just because we stand behind you doesn't mean we believe we're fighting for the right cause. I frowned, moving my gaze down to the floor. I knew I wasn't in the right. I knew I was fighting for a lost cause. But it was fair. I didn't want to fight for the Kai that murdered their Beta and Luna. If I could turn her over to V and Dite as custody, I would. But I can't. Now all I could do is fight for the person I think I wanted to be. So what do you want me to do? I asked, moving my gaze back up to Daniela's. She thought for a moment, leaving me in complete silence. Do right by this pack as we're doing for you. Daniela really struck a chord in me. Do right by this pack as we're doing for you. What does that even mean? That could mean anything. That could mean fight until you get yourself killed or turn yourself and before you hurt anyone else. Honestly, with Daniela, there were plenty of options. Before I had the opportunity to speak, Donnie left the kitchen, leaving me there with nothing but my thoughts and a roux and newspaper. I could proudly say that I knew Matteo's office like the back of my hand. I had everything from where to find staples to the key to his liquor cabinet tattooed in my brain as if I were born with it in there. Unfortunately, that made things a little boring when I was in need of something to do. For a while, sneaking into Matteo's office and snooping in all of his personal belongings was my main source of entertainment. A few weeks later, I found out that Matteo knew about my snooping the entire time, so it kind of lost its appeal. I still did it. Nonetheless, now the only things I have to keep me entertained are the liquor cabinet and the security cameras. If I had a dime for every time that happened. I mumbled as I watched a fight between teammates sent by the girl storming out of the room. She'll be back. Buddy. They always come back. I knew that going to the cellars wasn't an option for me to do in person. Matteo made that very clear. So I chose to do the next best thing. When I tried watching in on the cellars from the security cameras to find that Matteo had shut them down, I decided to feed my boredom other ways. That's how I ended up with a glass of some type of whiskey that I didn't bother reading the name of while watching the security cameras from the second level of the pack house. Okay, maybe I was just bored. Perhaps. I was trying to fuel my body with liquid ignorance. But still, anything that kept my mind off of the sick feeling in my stomach induced by my conversation with Daniela was welcomed. I swirled around the dark liquid in the glass before throwing back what was left. The spicy feeling of it burning its way down my torso like gasoline made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Matteo liked the strong stuff. Placing the glass back onto the desk, my arm bumped some papers in the process, knocking a few onto the floor. Matteo's nasty stack of papers was something I never paid attention to. Now that I could read a majority of what was on them, it made my head hurt to think about all of the tasks that we had to deal with. I say we lightly. However, I did catch a glimpse of a document that sparked my interest as I bent down to pick up the few that had fallen. The corner of it had a little logo of a house which could have merely been for the massive complex we currently live in. But something about it told me differently. Reading through what I could of the document, it became clear to me what Matteo was scheming. I was sure how I felt knowing that he was looking into houses for the two of us. It never had a house before. A part of me felt revolted by the idea of the solidity of owning a home, while another craved it. It made my heart rate accelerate and butterflies to bounce every which way within me, but left my hands cold. Nevertheless, a smile appeared on my face as another thought occurred to me. Matteo was thinking about our future. It gave me confidence that I didn't realize I needed in that moment that I may actually make it out of this alive. I flipped over the letter hoping to see a photo of the home, but was left with a blank page. I frowned in disappointment as the ringing of a phone broke my thought. I furrowed my brows as I looked up to see the red light on Matteo's office, phone blinking wildly. I hesitated answering it. I had never been much of a cautious person, but now I needed to be more cautious than ever. Especially if Matteo just bought us a house. I decided to pick up the phone. However, I brought it up to my ear, but didn't say anything. I waited to hear the voice on the other end of the line and crossed my fingers that it was Adrian. I exhaled a sigh of relief after hearing the voice of a man whom I immediately knew was not the one out to get me. Elfin airs easy. The deep baritone voice of an older gentleman asked. No. I stuttered, not sure what to say. Oh, so in speaking to Kaye, the man concluded, making me both confused and impressed. Was I speaking to a wizard? Who is this? I asked, making the man chuckle. I will take that as a yes. He joked. Who is this? I repeated, this time with impatience flooding my tone. Alpha Ajax Con. If my stomach wasn't already in knots by this point, it sure was now. I was currently speaking with the man who could play a vital role in how all of this pans out if he ever agrees to an alliance. Because Apsens is the largest neutral pack in either of the Americas and many of the countries east of us. If Ajax were to align himself with Ajax, who knows what sort of chain reaction that would trigger. Other packs who choose to stay peaceful could also take inspiration from Apsens and side with us. Unfortunately, it could also work in the reverse. Hello, Ajax said, making me realize I'd been stuck in my own thoughts for who knows how long. Please tell me that you're calling about an alliance. I begged. I obviously wasn't the best at serious affairs such as these, but at least it was out there now. Not at all. In fact, I'm calling to tell Alphan Air's EA that his patrols in the south have been cutting close to our borders. I won't tolerate any overlap. Alpha Khan's voice thick with authority. Yet, I wanted to chuckle at his threat. What was a pack that was practically sworn to eternal peace going to do? Especially to see at us back. We had numbers on Apsens. That was for sure. I'm sorry. Okay. Things are kind of crazy over here. I swiftly apologized, trying to make amends. It wasn't working. Your current issues of war are not of my concern. The close comings of your pack to mine are. However, especially when they're coming into unclaimed territory so often. I rolled my eyes. It really wasn't as big of a deal as he was making it seem. Matteo often has guards on the border do a sweep about my lore to be on it, in unclaimed territory, just to be aware of anything that may be coming close. They were still a good distance away from Apsens borders. We're doing our best. Your best is not good enough. He interrupted me. In times like these, no pack is exactly safe, but I would like to keep mine as close to it as possible. Okay, but I'm family. That should mean something. I bartered. I was trying to play music with broken strings at this point. This was all news that Matteo already tried to wager. It does, but unfortunately family only goes so deep when you barely know someone. Had you been born here, it would be a different story. I clenched my teeth together in anger at what I knew he was trying to get at. Had you been born a pack wolf instead of a rogue, it would be a different story. That's not fair. I whined like a child. If I was sitting in a chair, I would have stomped my foot and pouted. Instead, all I could do was slam my hand down on the keyboard of the computer, which managed to change the screen to another area of the house. Please, tell Alphen easy of the border issue. I would hate to have to call again. By this point, I was panicking. It was obvious that Ajax did not find me as flattering as his mate had in the past. In defeat, I melted back into Matteo's chair. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement on the computer screen. I was looking into the cell where my father was being kept. That's when it hit me like a brick. Goodbye. Wait. I interrupted him. What if I offer you something that no one else could? The other end of the line was silent for a moment before Ajax finally spoke up. What would that be? My mouth felt dry, and every vein in my body felt as if they were laced with ice, cold, salt water. For the third time today, I was about to engage in a conversation I never thought I would have to, nor did I ever want to. My dad, I will give you custody of my father to do with as you wish if you just help us. The words felt like vomit coming out of my mouth, disgusting and repulsive. I had never once dreamt about using my father as a pawn. But Uri was offering up the man that stole away the daughter of an alpha. You have him. I could practically feel the excitement behind his words. It made my teeth grind in anger with not only him and the situation, but myself. Yes. He's been kept in one of our cellars for a few weeks now, I admitted. Bring him to me tomorrow at my border by 8 a.m. Then, we can talk about an alliance. My jaw dropped in shock at how well my idea was working. Maybe I should make last-minute decisions more often. Wait. Seriously. Goodbye. Alphenares EA. Ajax concluded before hanging up the phone and leaving me there. Clueless. I looked back up to the screen to see my reflection overlapping the live footage of my father pacing his cell. For a moment, my heart felt like it was breaking for the man who raised me, but I quickly pushed my feelings aside. I knew I needed to make Matteo aware of what was happening, especially because we were on such limited time. The cellars were located about a mile away from the pack house. It was designed a way to allow pack members to prepare themselves if anyone were to escape custody. It is a smart system that few alphas think to use. It only took me about 10 minutes to reach it by running in a dead sprint. My adrenaline was raging through my system, making my legs feel like they could have kept moving for days without feeling any effect. The guards tried telling me that I wasn't allowed to enter the cells, knowing that my mate would never publicly diminish me anyway. I explained as nicely as possible, which wasn't very nice at all, that as an alpha, I had the ability to remove them from not only their position but also this pack. I was granted access pretty quickly. I thank the universe for giving me a mate who believed my voice was just as powerful as his own. I didn't know the exact layout of the cells, so I had to rely on the sound of voices. Thankfully, the bond between Matteo and I was stronger than ever, so I was able to easily pick up not only his voice but his intoxicating scent. If I weren't on a mission, I'd probably try to persuade him into spending some much-wanted time with me in the bedroom. I heard him before I saw him, and from the sound of it, he was the happiest. You're only down here because I'm allowing you to be. Don't take that for granted. Matteo growled. There's no reason to treat her like she's an animal. Jack argued back. I could only assume that they were arguing about Jack's mate. Wait, Matteo said abruptly. I could faintly hear him taking a large breath before sighing in angry defeat. Kai is coming, but with news, I shouted as I sprinted the rest of the way to him. He and Jack were in a room 2 halls down from where I'd heard them speaking. I should have known Matteo wouldn't be all too excited to see me, but I didn't expect him to be glaring at me with his arms folded over his chest. I told you that you weren't to come down here until we figured out what we're doing with that girl. Matteo West's voice was calm as if he were a prime-ended a child, but the way his jaw clenched gave way to how angry he truly was. I had a feeling it was entirely because of me by the way Jack stood on the other side of the room looking annoyed. That girl has a name, Jack snapped. A name that we don't have king know. I could tell that Jack and Matteo weren't anywhere close to being done throwing underhanded jabs at one another. Jack, I think you should go, I suggested. His eye contact instantly connected with mine. The fire in them flared up at my suggestion. This isn't I cut him off before he had the chance to finish his statement. I was trying to dehumanize him by any means. There were just more important things that needed to be discussed. I couldn't really accomplish that if he was creating a tense environment. Jack, leave. The hurt in Jack's face sent a painful jab straight to my chest. Is that an order? Another painful jab. The betrayal lingering in his words made my throat feel a little tighter. I know what he meant. An alpha's order is irrefutable. No, I said, doing my best to keep my voice even. We held each other's gazes for a moment more before Jack dropped his gaze to the floor and stormed past me. Out of the room. Hes infuriating do you have to be like that? I chided, crossing my arms over my chest. You shouldn't even be down here, Matteo countered, making me remember the reason I came here in the first place. We're going to Apsens border in the morning, I stated before pausing for a fraction of a second. I knew what I wanted to say, but my mouth didn't want to say it. With my dad? What the hell are you talking about? He was totally confused, and I didn't blame him. Apsens called, and we made a deal. An alliance for my father, I explained. It was a secret to Matteo that Apsens had an eternal grudge against my father for whisking away such an important member of their pack without warning. Are you sure you're okay with that? I was sure what answer Matteo was trying to pull out of me. Did he expect me to say yes? If so, then he couldn't be further from the truth. Truly, I felt like I was doing something that my father himself would do which made it all hurt more. But could my dad really blame me? Hes the one who raised me to make these kinds of decisions. We all have to make sacrifices, I said with a shrug, trying to make it seem like it didn't have much effect on me. But I could tell by the look on Matteo's face that he knew this decision was eating me up inside. Chapter 35 Manipulative Prick. I think I'm getting used to riding around in cars. Or maybe the medication is just really doing its job. Either way, I only throw up every 20 minutes now instead of 5. I would say I'm certainly improving in some way. Can we stop the car for a second? I asked, feeling the bile begin to build up in my chest. With a sigh, Matteo pulled the car off to the side of the road. I leaned forward and drew in deep breaths to try to make the sick feeling go away. His hand rubbed my back soothingly as I rocked back and forth. The hair on my arm stood up as electricity danced across my skin from such a simple gesture. The things this man did to me. EW, my dad from the back seat. I watched out of the corner of my eye as Matteo sharply turned around to give my father a warning glare. This is how most of our ride has gone. We drive a little. I feel nauseous. We stop. Matteo tries to make me feel better. My dad gags from the back seat. Matteo snaps at him. And then repeat. We stay like this for a couple minutes with me hunched over my knees, while Matteo's palm dances over my back. We'd come to realize that aside from the medicine, this also does quite the trick. Matteo isn't the biggest fan of me sucking down to pills every time I feel my stomach start to churn, which I'm assuming is because of his mother. So we've agreed to turn to an alternative method instead. I would be lying if I said that I didn't enjoy this method a lot more. I think I'm okay. I sighed as I pick up my head. I catch my reflection in the rear view, which causes me to grimace internally. My cheeks were flushed, and my hair was sticking to the sides of my face from the never-ending cold sweat. "Are you sure?" Matteo asked softly, his dark eyes peering intensely into mine. I know he doesn't like seeing me like this, especially when he knows a large part of it is induced by what is to come. The thought of what we were on our way to do made my stomach do a flip, but I ignored it. "Yeah, let's just go. We're almost there, right?" I asked, hope placing its way into my tone. Matteo gave me a weak smile as he brought my cold hand up to his lips. "Yeah, 20 minutes, but I can make it 10. I smiled as he placed a soft kiss to the back of my hand. "Then, let's King go," my dad snapped from the back. I rolled my eyes at how eager he was to reach our destination. He had no idea of what was to come. Again, Matteo's eyes snacked back to my father. They hesitated for a moment before coming back to me. Before I had time to say anything, Matteo placed a soft kiss to my lips, which instantly made any nauseous feeling in my stomach subside. "Well, a suction. I guess I'll have to remember that for next time." A low growl sounded from behind us, making me wince. My dad was tolerating Matteo, after speaking to him in the cellar about my mom. I think something in his demented brain may have clicked. Just one thing, though. He's still pretty messed up, but at least he isn't being as awful. Now I'm just the awful one, giving up my father to save myself. I pulled away from Matteo and gave him a knowing look. I knew he only did it to irritate my dad. Matteo was one for affection, especially with other people around. Despite my look, his face remained totally neutral and void of emotion. I rolled my eyes as he put the car back in drive and sped to our destination. True to his word, we made it there in 10 minutes. I only know this because I made sure to watch the clock on his dash and countdown as the minutes went by. I swear, every time the number got smaller, the car sped up about 10 miles. It was stupid moments like these that I think I was going to miss the most if all of this ends up falling in Viandida's favor. I tried to not think about all of the negative possibilities as the car rolled to a stop. The only thing or person I suppose that I was focused on in that moment was the alpha on the other side of the windshield. Alpha Ajax Con. I nervously clenched my jaw as I watched the smirk on his face deepen. It made uneasiness swirl within my chest, making me want to take my dad back home. I couldn't. Though, we needed this alliance more than I needed my dad right now. "What the hell is going on?" My dad snapped, which broke the silence in the car. My heart was racing, and I couldn't tell if it was from excitement or overwhelming regret. Was this the right thing to do? I shook my head at the thought. Of course is the right thing. "Ready?" Matteo asked, breaking me from my thoughts. My eyes never left Ajax, though. I couldn't stop myself from staring at the tall man with his arms folded over his chest. This man was family, yet it never felt more uneasy about a person in my life. Why did he remind me so much of my brother? That weird, devious smirk. It must run in the family. I hummed. Ready for what? Ignoring my father's question. We each got out of the car. Neither of us were worried about my dad finding his way out. He was handcuffed and weakened to the point that a shift would hardly be possible. Besides, it would just be uncomfortable to shift in a car. Matteo and I met at the front of the car. Just as he took my hand in his, I heard the lock on the door fall into place. Maybe Matteo didn't trust those handcuffs as much as I did. The two of us walked up to Ajax's hand in hand. I noticed Ajax's eyes shift down to our hands before looking between the two of us. I felt like I was being judged, and I hated it. I couldn't begin to understand why, but it felt like everything I was doing in that moment was completely wrong. I turned around to look at my dad. Once more. Anger was written all over his face, but there was something else there. To confusion. I don't blame him. By this point, a few other men had joined Ajax for safety reasons. I assume no alpha can ever be too safe, especially now. Alpha heirs is a Ajax acknowledged Matteo, but you shook hands before Ajax's attention moved to me. His smile widened. Hello, Kai. I wanted to correct him and make him refer to me as a Luna in that moment. For some ungodly reason. I wanted to be taken seriously as an alpha, but I couldn't find the right words. It still burnt my tongue to even think of. On the other hand, I'm pretty sure if he would have referred to me in any other way, I would have gagged. Yeah, I wanted to punch myself in the face. Am I stupid? Must be. Matteo must have sensed my unease because he gave my hand a light squeeze. It calmed me for a moment before he and Ajax started to speak. I'm going to assume HE's the one in the car, Ajax commented, gesturing to my dad who was now completely focused on our conversation. There was no way my dad couldn't hear everything we were saying. By the look on his face, I think he was starting to catch on. As well. I gulped as Matteo answered. Yes, I wanted to say no. I wanted to turn around and say, oops, looks like we brought the wrong person. But it was far too late for that now. As soon as the word left Matteo's mouth, Ajax's men walked past us to either side of Matteo's car. The one closest to my dad opened the door. What do you think my dad started to say? But was interrupted by the man literally yanking my dad out of the car. He stumbled to his feet as the man pulled him up by the back of his shirt. I took a step forward out of instinct to help him, but Matteo's tight grip on my hand kept me planted beside him. Kaya, what is going on? The confusion and fear in his tone made my heart skip several beats. I was beginning to hope that maybe I would just die in that minute, and everything would just end then and there. I was that lucky. The two guys walked my dad over Ajax's border and into his territory. Well, more like they drug him across as the collar of his shirt choked him. As he turned around to ask what was going on for a second time, I couldn't ignore the look in his eyes. It made my stomach drop, and my knees weak. It seemed my dad mad and Ivy seen him upset, but this was something different. It was sheer betrayal. I couldn't help it when words began tumbling out of my mouth. What are you going to do with him? Matteo's grip on my hand tightened at my question. I'm guessing that was the right thing to say. I really don't think that's any of your business at this point. Ajax chuckled over my dad's objections. I narrowed my eyes at him and scrunched my nose in distaste. Yes, my dad. It is my business. I snapped. Kai. Matteo warned lowly. I should have probably listened, but I wasn't focused on Matteo in that moment. And you just gave him to me. Ajax chuckled. Funny how that works. Are you going to kill him? I asked. There was a heaviness on my chest as the word kill left my lips. All those times that had threatened to end my dad's life. I never actually thought it would happen. I never thought anyone other than my dad would kill my dad. It just didn't make sense to me. Again, Kai. What I do with him is no longer any of your concern. Kaya, let it go. Matteo hissed between clenched teeth. I ground my teeth together and pushed back all of the questions I wanted to ask. I wanted to say, is my dad going to be alive if I come back to visit in 24 hours? Am I ever going to be able to see him? Don't you care how my mother would feel? But I didn't let it slip this time. I could feel Matteo's anger bubbling, and I didn't want to deal with it. You promised my mate an alliance for her father. Matteo spoke seriously. To any average person, he would seem to be calm and serious, but I knew him better. He spoke too quickly. The front of his brows were angled downward, and his hand held mine just a bit tighter. Matteo was on edge, and I couldn't quite pinpoint why. Ajax's head tilted slightly as if he were a confused child. The left corner of his mouth curved upward and his brows drew together. It was in that moment that my heart sank. No, he shook his head. I said we could talk about one. Then, let's talk about it. Matteo replies swiftly. I could tell by the look in Ajax's eyes of what was to come. For someone who disassociates himself from my family so much, he sure does act a lot like us. A liar. A manipulator. We just did. And I don't think it's in our best interest. He shrugged. It was nice to see the both of you. Again. His 6 mile made my teeth grind together with such power that I could practically feel my teeth retreat back into my... I lurched forward as he turned on his heel to leave. I broke the grasp that Matteo had on my hand, but his arms wrapping themselves around my waist forced me to a stop. "You're a liar." I snarled against Matteo's firm hold. Ajax turned around and gave me a quick glance before chuckling. "You're new to this. Kai, you'll learn." With that, he walked away from the two of us. "Get the hell off of me." I screamed as I ripped my from Matteo. Our eyes connected and my finger raised to point at his face. "You did this. You knew this would happen, didn't you? You just wanted to get rid of him." I knew Ajax as pack members that were supposed to stand guard until we left were all watching. It was hard not to stare at some small girl shouting at one of the most feared Delphus to have ever lived. Matteo's hand grasped my wrist, pulling my hand down between us. The darkness in his eyes grew deeper the longer I stared into them. "Listen to yourself. Do you think I would actually do that to you?" he asked, making my snarled lip turn to a frown. "If I wanted him gone, I would have done it myself." My jaw clenched tightly, and the only sound between us that could be heard was my heavy breathing. Kaya, you know I would never do something to intentionally hurt you." I knew that. I did. I just cowed and stopped thinking about how off Matteo was being. How nervous he was acting during the whole exchange. How quickly his demeanor changed. It didn't make sense to me. Why would he do that? My voice cracked as I said it. It made me wince thinking that everyone here just heard my heart break through my voice. My own family just lied to me and took my dad probably just to kill him. I wish he would have just taken me instead. Matteo was much more responsive than any of the 5 men standing along Apsens' border. His stern expression dropped before wrapping his arms around me, pulling me into a hug. I tucked my head into his chest. A burning sensation in my chest and throat climbed up my spine. I could practically hear it tell my eyes to release the floodgates, that I was going to let that happen. Not here. Not now. Not ever again. "Baby, let's go," Matteo whispered into my hair. I paused for a moment as I thought about it. Did I want to go? No. I wanted to murder every single person in this pack and laugh as I did it. But would that help this situation? "No, okay," I mumbled. It was in that moment that I genuinely thought that I might kill myself if Vindicta didn't kill me first. I shook away the thought. It was like me to think so. Dark. The car ride home was silent. I think for the first time, we discovered something that made me feel even more sick that drive-in. I cowed and stopped thinking about what I'd done. It was like my head wouldn't let me forget because the memory played on repeat. I just gave him away. No reward. No trade. No nothing. I literally just gave my father up for absolutely nothing. At this point, I just settled on the idea that I was bound to die. No one was going to help us. It was all a lost cause. I was a murderer. And that's the end of that story. I was hoping that Apsens' alliance would let all of the pieces start to fall into place. But instead it took all of those little pieces and sanded them down to dust. It took all of my little pieces and burnt them. Then, it burnt the ashes too. I was an idiot for thinking that Apsens would agree to help us. Kai, HES, not going to kill your father. He isn't that dumb, Matteo said as we pulled into the parking lot of the pack house. I bit the inside of my lip, not knowing how to respond. Why do you say that? Was he just lying to make me feel better? Or does he have some sort of secret intel that I'm unaware of? He knows that it would start a war with us, he clarified. My brows furrowed together in confusion as Matteo continued. Parker may not be a pack member, but he is still your father. Ajax knows better than that. Does he? Oh, he pretty much lied to me. In my world, that's reason enough for him to die. Is that what I'm going to have to learn? I spat, recalling his words from earlier. You're new to this. Kai, you'll learn. Matteo sighed. He took my hand and ran his thumb over the back of it. I knew he was trying to get me to calm down before we walked inside. so that not every pack member went into a panic over my anger. Ajax stays neutral because he knows how to play with the rules. Never breaks them. Just walks the line, which makes it incredibly difficult to start any sort of fight with him. My lip raises into a snarl as I thought about his devious little smile. He knew what he was doing from the moment we got there. So I'm going to have to learn that he's a manipulative prick. I barked, earning me yet another sigh. Yes, and he's good at it. Hence, why I don't get involved with him. We both remained silent for a moment. I had so much I wanted to say. I could feel it on my tongue, but I didn't know what it was. I couldn't put any of it into words. So you don't think I'll kill my dad? I wanted a genuine answer, and I was hoping that by the vulnerability in my voice that Matteo would understand that. There isn't it out in my mind. He woodland Tryst. Chapter 36. Just a shower. I was so tired. Mentally and physically. I felt drained to the point that I wasn't even that hungry. Every single thing felt like so much of a chore that I slept a good portion of the day. The first day after the whole ordeal with Apsens, Matteo didn't say anything. He just let me sleep for 19 hours. I woke up feeling more tired than I did when I first fell asleep. The second day, Matteo tried to get me to eat lunch. I rolled away from him and went back to bed. But I did eat dinner with him later. It was mostly because he brought it up to our room and practically force-fed me. Yesterday, Matteo made me wake up before noon. He didn't really say much. Just ran me a bath and let me lay in there for a while. I knew that what he was doing was right. I didn't want to stay in bed all day. I didn't want to not eat. But not a single cell in my body made that possible. It was a feeling I hadn't felt in years. Matteo shook me lightly, making me groan. Look at me. I sighed in annoyance but decided to just listen to him. If I'd learned anything from the past few days, it was that Matteo really didn't like to take no for an answer. He pretty much always found a way to wake me up or get me eating. My eyes slowly opened to see Matteo fully dressed and crouched in front of me beside the bed. Despite the weather still being cold, he only had on a pair of dark washed denim jeans and a long, sleeved black shirt. I wasn't complaining, though. The shirt fit his chest and shoulders nicely, which was always a bonus for me. Come with me today, he said softly. His face was so close to mine that I could feel his minty breath and over my skin. It caused goosebumps to rise on my arms, but they weren't detectable from being under the blanket. I didn't respond. I just shook my head. It wasn't a question. I need you today. I'm not sure why, but hearing him say that he needed me made warmth swell within me. If I was so tired, I probably would have smiled. I need to shower, I mumbled. The corners of Matteo's lips turned upwards into a small smile. Again, warmth swelled in my chest, making my toes curl. I'll grab you some clothes, he said, placing a soft kiss to my cheek. I took in another deep breath before pushing myself out of bed. I think it was a little too swift of a movement for the morning, though. My vision went blurry for a moment, and a coldness swept over my entire body. I gasped and felt my knees buckle underneath me. Luckily, the bed was below me, so I hit that before the floor. I held my head in my hands as I waited for the dizzy feeling to go away. This shit felt worse than a hangover. At least hangovers aren't emotionally involved well. Mine aren't. I heard Matteo's heavy footsteps make their way around the bed. I didn't trust my body enough to lift my head up to look at him. Matteo wasn't really having it with that excuse. His large hands held both sides of my face and lifted it so that I was looking at him. He frowned, most likely taking in the drained look on my face. Bath instead. I shook my head. I need to get up. I sighed. I didn't entirely trust my legs, but I needed to get them going. I might as well have pool noodles for legs at this rate. Matteo helped me up and steadied me by holding my arms. Will you come with me? I asked, feeling a bit brave. Honestly, I could see this conversation going either way. He could either say, no, I already had a shower, or sure, I love seeing you without clothes even when you look like you've been hit by a bus. Either are acceptable answers coming from my mate who seems to have totally different personalities half the time. Matteo didn't really give me either of those answers. Instead, he gave me a lopsided smile. "Come on," he coaxed, gently pulling me toward the bathroom. As we got in, Matteo took a seat on the lid of the toilet. I frowned, knowing that this is what he meant when he agreed to come with me. This is not what I wanted. I could feel Matteo's hesitance. He had been this way since we came back from Apsens territory. It was evident that the whole incident knocked a screw loose in my head. But I think Matteo was genuinely worried about my mental health. I don't blame him. A part of me was. So that was a fact that I absolutely f-king hated. I was never the one to mope around, to flaunt the idea of depression. I was depressed. I couldn't be. Not over this. If I end up dead, then it was meant to be. Nothing to get so upset over. Right. I swayed for a moment as I turned from Matteo and stared at the shower. It was just a week or two ago that I cried in there. Now you would never know. All broken remnants of the door had been discarded and replaced by a new one. I ground my teeth back and forth as I thought about taking off Matteo's crew neck and sweats that I had on. I was so comfortable. Did I really want to take them off? No. I reached for the dial on the shower and turned on the water. I could practically feel Matteo's questioning eyes burning holes into the back of my skull. My right foot stepped into the shower, absorbing the streams of water as they came down, but the left didn't have enough time. Matteo had already pulled me back. "What are you doing?" he asked in disbelief. I shrugged and leaned back into his chest. "Getting in the shower. With your clothes on." Whilst it obvious by my wet pant leg that was clearly my intention, yes. "You need to take them off." He chided as if I was a child. "Do it for me." Well, that certainly caught his attention. He leaned away slightly, allowing me to turn around and actually face each other. The look on his face confused me. He looked torn. A few months ago he'd be tearing these clothes off of me. But now he just seems unsure. Do I really look that bad? Wow, okay. I muttered, pulling myself away from him. Recovering quickly, he pulled me back. "Kaya, it's not like that," he explained as I tried to look everywhere but at him. "It's just clear that you're not okay. You almost passed out in there." I frowned, knowing he was right to a certain degree, but not entirely. "It's just a shower." "Matteo," I said quietly as I looked down at the floor. A few seconds passed before I heard his tired sigh. I kind of assumed he was just going to leave, but it took me by surprise when he started to lift the crew neck over my head instead. The complete loss of fabric on my torso made my skin immediately pimple from the cold air. His warm hands hooked into the band of the sweatpants that I was wearing and pulled them down, leaving me there in just my underwear. We both looked at each other. I think he was waiting for me to take them off, but I gave him an impatient look instead. Getting my hint, he slowly took them off as well. It'd be lying if I said it was my favorite part. "Go ahead," he ushered, nodding his head toward the shower. I narrowed my eyes in response. With an eye roll, he stripped off his shirt, revealing his perfectly sculpted torso. "Just a shower. Kaya, I'll follow you in," he assured, nodding his head toward the shower again. His hands moved down to the buckle of his jeans, and I couldn't help but want to do it for him. I didn't trust myself, though. I'd probably get down on my knees to fast and practically pass out. Again. Then deception. I'd definitely be taking a shower alone. Slow movements were essential this morning, I guess. The contact of hot water on my cold skin made me jump for a moment before I began to adjust to the temperature. With my eyes shut, I sighed in contempt as the water ran over me. It was long before I felt Matteo's presence behind me. He never actually came up to me, though, even when I was just trying to have a sweet moment between the two of us. He was still being so cautious. "Matteo, come here. I chuckled lightly, wiping the water from my eyes. Damn, why couldn't this shower be smaller? You said just a shower. He reminded me. Yes, I scoffed, turning my head to look back at him. Eyes up. Kaya. I'm dizzy, I continued. hoping he'd get the hint that I wanted him to actually hold me and not just stare. It didn't work out very well. "You're impossible," he said, reaching over me to get my shampoo. I pouted while he put the coconut-scented soap in my hair. I was on the verge of resisting when his fingers began massaging it in. Damn, what a sex. This was something different. Knowing he was close enough to me, I took a step back and leaned into his chest as he continued to lather the soap in my hair. "I love you." I'm not sure why I said it. Maybe it was out of appreciation, lust, actual love. Whatever it was, I felt it at that moment. Therefore, the words flew out, and I really didn't feel ashamed of it, either. It was indeed a first. "I love you," too, replied without hesitation. I grinned excitedly. I felt like a kid again. For a moment, it made my heart bubble to hear those words and know someone actually meant it without having to earn it. Our shower went on without anything actually happening. I knew Matteo would have already gotten a shower that morning, so he just took his time washing me instead. I think it was the calm, quality time we both needed. Our lives as of late had been so consumed by the overhanging threat of wind, didn't really have time to worry about anything else. "Can you hand me my brush?" I asked as I towel-dried my hair. Within seconds, Matteo was in front of me with a purple brush in his hand. "Thanks." I snatched the brush and worked it through the knots in my hair. Hair is kind of weird if you really think about it. "What is hair?" I questioned, as Matteo slipped his long sleeve back over his wonderfully toned torso. "Damn. Like dead cells or something." "Oh," I replied as I thought about it. "My hair is dead cells. They're just dead cells hanging there." My nose scrunched up in disgust. "I'm going to go grab you something to eat. You'll be back," he stated seriously, giving me a nod and walking out our bedroom door. "Okay. No need to be so formal. It's not like you didn't just fondle my tits 10 minutes ago," I muttered to myself, as I wrapped the fluffy, light blue robe tighter around myself. By the time Matteo got back, I had changed into my outfit for the day, jeans and a crew neck, another one of Matteo's. This time, it was an old high school one he got when he played hockey. I had a toothbrush hanging out of my mouth when he bathed into the bathroom with a water bottle in one hand and a glass of what seemed to be orange juice in the other. I quickly spit the foam from the paste into the sink, wiped my mouth, and turned around to give him a raised brow. "Something to eat," I joked. He rolled his eyes and shoved the water toward me. "Breakfast is downstairs," the pack member was kind enough to offer. I could tell by the tone in his voice and the look in his eyes that the pack member didn't just offer. The idea of food was incredibly inviting to me. Nonetheless, ignoring the water bottle and snatching the juice instead, I took a quick gulp and forced a smile. "Let's f***ing go." Then, I internalized the winds caused by my heart practically smashing itself against my ribcage. She really was not happy. Breakfast was fast. The atmosphere made me restless, so I ate quickly. I think everyone in the pack house was on high alert, especially so since the failed alliance. I found that word tends to spread fast around the pack. Their Luna locking herself in her room probably wasn't helping the situation either. People were starting to get the hint that this was not going to end well for someone, and right now, it was looking to be in our favor. After asking me 7 times if I was still hungry, Matteo took my plate away. To be honest, I kind of was, but I didn't want to stay in that room any longer. It was making me do that bouncy thing with my leg that my dad always hated. We left breakfast and went to Matteo's car. I argued it for a minute, but he assured me that it was only a few minutes of a drive. I crossed my fingers and prayed that my stomach could hold it down for that long, especially after eating. I must have been in someone's good books because we made it to C's prison compound without any vomit. "What are we doing here?" I asked. He obviously knew what I meant. What am I doing here if I'm not allowed? Jack has left. He won't listen to me because he just sees me as the alpha who is keeping his mate locked up. I could hear the hint of pain in his voice, but the frown etched into his face is what really gave away his sadness. Despite their constant arguing and lack of compassion for one another, it was obvious that the two were best friends. Brothers even. That makes sense, I concurred, not really knowing what else to say. How would I feel if I were in Jack's shoes? Probably a lot angrier. Although, I couldn't deny the fact that Donnie's words from a week ago kept trickling in. She's doing her alpha's dirty work. You were doing your own. They have every right to be hunting you down. Of course. We're going to stand behind you, no matter the situation. But just because we stand behind you doesn't mean we believe we're fighting for the right cause. It twisted my insides into knots. I had to physically place my hand on my leg to stop it from bouncing. Again. He just needs to come home. Eat something, preferably take a shower. Matteo explained. He literally hasn't left the compound. I gaped. I assumed when Matteo said that Jack hadn't left, he meant that he came back to the house to at least eat something. Even for just a few minutes a day. No, but I think he might listen to you. Did he really? The last conversation Jack and I had ended with me telling him to leave. I didn't really see Jack taking anything I had to say at this point to heart, especially when it came to his mate. I don't think this is your brightest idea. You're closer to Jack than he'll ever be. I argued. You're closer to the kid than you think. I think we have a mutual friendship that goes as deep as him being my babysitter. At one point, I responded, crossing my arms over my chest. That was a lie. I knew, for me at least, that it went deeper than that. I told Jack things that I hadn't even told Matteo, and not sure how much of how I felt went both ways. Though, besides, I'm sure I'm the last person he wants to see. His mate is in there because of me. My voice turned to a mumble the closer I got to the end of the sentence. It was difficult to admit, but it was a hard one to accept. I looked down at my lap, biting my lip. If I was a crier, I probably would have teared up. Instead, I focused on the threads of my jeans. Kai, Matteo said seriously. I felt like a kid who was about to get a lecture. Why was he so serious today?
I didn't like it.
And hummed softly. I was hoping that maybe Matteo would just take the hint that my guilt was eating me alive for what I was putting Jack through. But it turns out he didn't. Look at me, he demanded, his tone stern, yet pleading. I guess that was a little better, a little. Why? I asked, my guilt coming off as annoyance. Look at me, he repeated. This time, his voice was louder, but the words came out slower. Deciding I was going to have to look at him at some point, I raised my gaze from my lap. I was expecting to meet an angry set of blue eyes, but I was surprisingly greeted by a small frown and comforting pair of dark blues. It isn't your fault that she's in there. It's hers. She got caught in Ajax. And now, she'll pay for it. Jack knows that. It was supposed to be reassuring, but it didn't work. The only thing it did was make it a little harder for me to swallow. But it wasn't her fault. I wanted to argue. She didn't just come over here because she wanted to. She was doing it because it was her duty. She didn't need to believe in what she was doing. She just had to do it. It was because I spilled blood when there was a reason to. Now innocent people are expected to even the score. I suppose that was one of the nasty parts of being in a pack that I never entirely understood, having to fight other people's battles. It's unfortunate. I responded, lips pressed into a thin line. Yeah, but that's how it works. She knew the risk she was taking. He shrugged. He was still talking about the girl. I, on the other hand, had been talking about the boy with dirty blonde hair that didn't deserve any of this. Our conversation was cut short when someone came up to Matteo's car. I was actually thankful for it. It enticed the both of us to exit the car. The someone was a woman with her dirt brown hair pulled back into a ponytail, clad in a black jacket, dark jeans, and boots with tread that looked like it was created to scale mountains. I assumed she was a guard on duty. She briefed Matteo on the situation with the girl, which was a relatively simple conversation. She was talking. There didn't seem to be a chance. And with her being Jack's mate, they didn't really go any further with their methods of making her. The conversation started to take a turn. and I knew it was bound to be minutes before I began to zone out. "Where is Jack?" I chimed in quickly, breaking their conversation. The beta is on level C. Block D," she responded. Her voice didn't waver a bit, but her eyes switched between myself and the tree behind me several times. It was hardly noticeable, but I caught it. Nonetheless. "Okay." I nodded, stepping away from them. I expected Matteo to stop me as I approached the guard outside the door, but he didn't. I was let inside the compound without an issue. Once inside, I sighed. I was never one to look at the levels or blocks. I sort of just walked around aimlessly until I stumbled across whatever it was that I was searching for. I suppose today was the day for that sort of thing. I think it may have taken me longer to locate the sea level of the building than it would have if it just began to wander. It was definitely colder than the level I had first entered in. Wet drops of something from somewhere rolled down the walls here and there, making me feel like I was in a cave. I was just here days ago. Why did it suddenly seem so much different? So much darker? Because what if it was you down here? I shook the thought out of my head and walked a little faster. The levels weren't nearly as difficult to understand as the blocks were. I turned one way and I was in block A. Make one right, and I wound up in block H. Either I lacked direction or the person who built this did. After about 10 minutes, I stumbled across the fluorescent red letters that read, "Cell Block D." With a sigh of relief, I sped up my pace down the endless hall of cold steel bars. "It wouldn't help your case any, so what's it matter?" A woman's voice carried through the halls. The further I walked, the louder it got. "I don't think it needs to help the King case. I just want to know your name." Another voice, and this time, I knew who it belonged to. Jack. This caused my feet to slow down. Should I go back? Was he going to tell me to leave this time? No, he couldn't do that. Even if he wanted to. His instincts would never let him. I stopped walking just before the hall ended at a corner. "Well, Elle, get me out of here, and we can talk about it over a coffee," she offered, sarcasm dripping from her lips. It didn't take a genius to know who the voice belonged to. Well, Elle, well. Apparently it took a genius to know her name, but not that she was Jack's mate. "You know I could never." He paused mid-sentence, causing my brows to furrow together in confusion. Maybe he had to sneeze. "Hello, Kai." Busted. The tone of his voice was different, almost amused. I couldn't tell if he was being sarcastic or if he was truly amused by me being here. I was sure that when I actually saw the look on his face, my answer would be clear. Knowing I had no choice, I slowly rounded the corner of Block D. There, I could see Jack sitting with his back against a set of cellar bars near the middle of the hall. His arms rested over his knees while his hands lazily held his head. Yeah, it was sarcasm. Hey, I muttered, walking as quickly as I could down to Jack. He didn't respond. He just kept his eyes glued to my awkward walking body. A low grunt left my throat as I plopped onto my butt beside him. The cement was cold, colder than the air around us. The steel bars of the empty cell behind us pushed into my back uncomfortably. I shifted slightly, trying to find some sort of comfort, but realized quickly that that was not an option. Sighing, I focused something other than the bars pressing into my back like a cold iron. My gaze fixed on the woman in front of me. Well, baby girl would be more fitting. The first thing I noticed was her shape. I was so used to seeing Daniela and every other female in this place, all of their builds being feminine, but athletic. Height was for sure another trait that carried throughout the pack. Therefore, looking up to see a girl that barely passed 5 feet at probably the same weight as me at 55 was a bit of a surprise. She wasn't exactly chubby, but she was the thin, Amazonian figure that I was used to. Aside from her physical build, she had dark red hair, leaning brown. Either she really needed a shower, or she was a fan of hair dye. Probably both. Dirt smeared over her cheeks, making it look like she had a mass of gray freckles. Jack must have convinced Matteo to give her some new clothes because they weren't nearly as dirty as her skin. I found myself looking into her dark eyes for just a moment before returning my gaze back to Jack. I could still feel her eyes on me. Though, what have you been up to? I asked awkwardly. Jack gave me a sideways look in response. Really? He asked in disbelief that I even had the audacity to ask such a stupid question. It was pretty apparent by the weird smell coming off of him that he hadn't taken a good shower in a minute. You smell, I noted. I swear I heard the girl laugh, but when I gave her a side, she was as emotional as she had been moments ago. Jack shook his head, ignoring my insult. I was really hoping for a comeback. Girls aren't really like that. I pressed. I was hoping that I would hit a button, but again, I got ignored. I looked past Jack, down toward the end of Block D. Despite the place being lit up like a Christmas tree from all the fancy LED light fixtures, somehow, it all seemed so dark. I dropped my hands to my sides, allowing my palms to kiss the cold concrete floors. My fingertips pressed into the slab. It didn't give in to my touch as the carpet did on our floor. I didn't expect it to, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this was the same surface that I fell asleep on for nearly 4 years. For years of my life wasted because of something so stupid. I wanted to punch myself. That Kae would know what to do right now. She always knew how to talk her way out of a situation. Or run. I suppose that was always the safest option. I couldn't just run. Though, it was irritating knowing that your younger self was better at being bad than your current self, to say the least. So, now what? I'm stuck sitting on this cold floor with some chick that I don't even know, wishing I could be somewhere warmer. That wasn't going to happen unless Jack got the hell up. Unless I just moved the chick. I'm sure Jack would follow her like a magnet. I sat up a little straighter, realizing that I am more of a genius than I give myself credit for. I drummed my fingers against the concrete impatiently as I ran through the what-ifs. I suppose the whole thing could go a few ways, but hopefully, I knew Jack well enough. I hate it down here. I spat, breaking the silence. That was true. A few months ago. The musty air wouldn't have made me want to cover my mouth and nose with my shirt and run. But it did now. I didn't like the hard concrete that I used to willingly fall asleep on just to piss off the indicted guards. And I hated how damn cold it was. I'm going to have other arrangements made. This block is King terrible. The girl perked up a bit. I knew she understood what I meant by arrangements. But Jack, who was most likely functioning on little sleep, looked confused. What? Level is by far the warmest option. Plus, I'd seen the living situations in those cells. Oh, if that's what you want to call them. Some of those nice ones look like those dorm rooms you see on TV. I chuckled. Again, Jack was confused. What? I'm having her placed in one of level as cells later. Actually, I'll just do it now. I shrugged, standing up. I was crossing my fingers that I knew how Jack would react to such a claim. Maybe his mate changed him. Perhaps she didn't. I was hoping for the first one. Kaya, Jack barked, grasping my wrist and pulling me back down. You can't just do that. She's a threat. Perfect. She would be fine. They're just really nice cells. I shrugged, knowing that was far from the truth. They aren't just really nice cells. Those are meant for people who need a little time out. People who are from the pack and can be trusted. Level is grounds for low, risk inmates. She is not one. He stated like a true beta. I wanted to smirk so Dad but held it in. Jack could be an idiot. But when it came to this kind of stuff, he was a genius. He would figure out my little mind game really fast if I broke out some Joker smile. True to his title, Jack was a grade, a beta. He had to be in C at a SPAC. You're crazy. Look at her. I motioned toward the 5-foot warrior thing in the cell. Even she was looking at me like I was a little crazy. She can't do jack shit. Hey, Jack warned, lowering his gaze. What the heck is that supposed to mean? I thought for a second someone else entered the hall. But no, a little thing actually spoke. And boy, Did she look irritated? You're too afraid to pull anything. Just like you were too afraid to fight until you were the last one standing. I paused for a moment. Well, until you weren't. I knew that wasn't entirely true. She was by far the best fighter of the three. Most likely, she was just waiting to gain leverage. But that didn't really happen. I was surprised to not see steam start trolling out of her ears. That's how angry this little chick was getting. I was impressed by how good I still was at this. My dad said I had a gift for breaking people down. They tend to be most vulnerable when they are angry. And now look at you. Too afraid to even say your own name. I pouted, making my voice sound like I was talking to a baby rather than a teenage girl. I am not, she snapped, pointing her finger at my face. Taking one solid step toward the cellar, I lowered my gaze to look her dead in the eyes. I wanted her to see the alpha wolf that she was talking to. Then, say it, bitch. I hissed darkly. It was a scene that could have given Matteo a run for his money. Slowly, her face morphed into something that I could only compare to a pissed-off fire ant. Her cheeks were practically glowing red from anger and her teeth bit down on one another so hard that I'm surprised they were all still intact. That's what I thought. I chided. I'm amused. I turned my back to her to face Jaxie. She's not going to hurt anyone. Just some dumb kid who they probably sent out here to get herself killed anyway. Kaya, that's enough. What's wrong with you? Jack's question made something in my chest snap. I wanted to tell him that it was all an act. But was it? This is what I knew. This is what I was good at. Me, what's wrong with you? I fired back. I know a suicide mission when I see one. Jack didn't respond. His jaw just clenched tightly. I shook my head with a cold chuckle. Too scared to even say her damn name. Taylor Ref King Verrader. The bitey response should have pissed me off. But it didn't. I smiled. I may not have accomplished getting Jack out of the cellars, but I did accomplish something else that no one else seemed to be able to. My gloating was cut short by an abrupt yank on my arm. Before I knew it, Jack was dragging my ass out of the cellar. So maybe I did manage to accomplish two things that day.